Thank you, Kanika. Hello, everyone. So, Kanika, thanks for the very kind words of introduction. And it's a pleasure to share my thoughts with my young colleagues. 35, 40 years of working life is a long way, and one picks up a lot of knowledge, a lot of information, experience, problem-solving skills along the way. And if just a part of it I'm successful in sharing, it will be my pleasure. Just a housekeeping correction. You may see on the ad wall that was posted, I'm being described as a resident in pathology in the US. So no, I'm not an American, I'm a Belgian. I live and work in Belgium, in Europe. And I'm certainly not a pathologist, I'm a pediatrician. So I guess that is one of those typo errors. So with that, we can start our today's discussion. What I'll try to do is in the next 30 minutes, walk you through my life, the life in industry, and what are the opportunities there, what are the roles that are possible, how to go about it, and let's just try to understand the selection process and what are the elements to be concerned about or to dwell deeper into prior to selecting this as a career. Okay, now, as for me, I started life, I trained as a pediatrician. That's the only thing I know how to do. I also trained a little in epidemiology, but that was more by way of training rather than a full-fledged program. I've been working in hospitals, I have been working in industry in multiple areas of research and development, and that is where it has brought me today and allowed me to share this experience with all of you. Now, the first step is, what are medical colleagues doing in the industry at all? That's a regular question, and I had that question when I came in. So when I was thinking of a midlife change in career, the question in my head obviously was, what is it that we do in industry? And is it something that I'm cut out for? Is it something I know? Is it something I can add value to? Because I sure could add some value by being a practicing pediatrician, but I would really have wanted to do something more that fulfills me, that allows me to live my life on the terms I visualize that I can contribute to my society. So that was the prime mover in my particular case. Now, for others, it's others. Historically, industry has always had a medical team because it's necessary, as you will see shortly. But most of these colleagues have been coming from a pharmacology background because, again, industry by definition is mostly the pharmaceutical industry. Sorry. Worldwide, there are very few vaccine companies. Just a handful. You can count them on your two hands and you won't run out of fingers. But while pharma companies are in thousands, if not in tens of thousands. So the vaccine industry is slightly separate, but the fundamentals do not change because mostly the ownerships are held in one or the other place. So that doesn't change much regarding the work culture, the work principles, the processes, and so on. It's just that the products are different and the way we develop them are sometimes a little different. The first thing to remember is that unlike in a practicing environment where it's all about me and my little team that I may or may not have, who take care of patients, who do our rounds, who do our seminars and our journal clubs and learn from each other and grow and develop and move to practice or to teaching. So that's the pathway that a classical physician or pediatrician would take in a working hospital environment. In the industry, there are two different facets to it. There is the facet of research and development, and I will give you some more details on that. And there's the facet of leadership. So as you grow with time, and if your aptitudes are right, and if you do end up being successful, you rise to positions of leadership. And leadership in this context is very different from the leadership we generally think about or perceive. Why? In the industry and in the medical team, we are actually leading a group of scientifically trained professionals, almost all of whom are physicians, but some of whom may also come from PhDs in different biotechnology domains. So when you are leading such a team, the fundamentals, the principle of leadership are very different, because many of my young colleagues do know as much or even more, very often actually more than I know. So leading them by just throwing your knowledge or throwing your few jargons around will not work. Leadership at that stage means getting that team to work together towards common objectives, common deliverables, and the role of the leader really is to be able to translate that into what's in it for me. Every one of us has or should have that question. Before we do anything, the first question is, what is in it for me? Now, what's in it for me could be financial or could be emotional. That's fine. But there has to be some added value to me, to you, before you take a step in moving in one career direction or the other. So coming to industry, in my opinion, should be a deliberate choice. It's not an accidental parking place that someone couldn't find a job and therefore comes to the industry. No, it's more difficult to actually get into industry than to find a job as a practicing hospital-based or clinic-based pediatrician or physician. It's way more difficult, way more competitive, a longer process. There's a lot of learning to be done. So it's a huge investment on terms of the person, you, your families. You would be expected to travel a lot. You would be expected to move across continents. You would have teams remotely located. Like in my case, I have a team located in Brazil and I have a team located in Vietnam. So you need to juggle out the time zone differences and then figure out how you are effectively able to connect on both these ends with a similar approach and helping one as much as you would help the other. So those are very special challenges that you only face in this environment. You do not face that in a working hospital environment, right? Now, there are multiple disciplines within the research and development umbrella of the industry. So I'll give you examples from vaccines, which is what I know. I've only worked in vaccines much of my life, but the principles are no different from pharmaceuticals or vaccines. Fundamentals would not be different. So let's put it into the scientific umbrella and the administrative umbrella. So the administrative, I already told you, being a leader, you got to manage a budget, you got to manage performance reviews, you got to take care of people's bonuses and salary increases and disciplinary actions and purchases for the department. So that is all procurement. All those are functions that you perform as an administrator, as a leader. But then, and that's a important but not the job. That's a part of the job that comes with the job. So someone has to do it. And if you are a leader of the team, you do it. Now, on the other side, there is a big horizon of scientific activities, medical and scientific activities that encompass this function of a medic working in an industry. Let's start with simple ones, and I may have to consult a note so that I don't miss out much. The big one is clinical development. Every drug, every vaccine that you see in the marketplace today has behind it many years of rigorous clinical research, right from phase 1 to the phase 3 licensure and even beyond the life cycle studies and the phase 4 and so on. So this is an ongoing process. It's the most critical piece of deliverables so far as the industry is concerned. And why? For good reasons. Number one, the studies done within the industry have to be done at best-in-class gold standards of the world. Why? Because we talk to regulators in highly developed societies, and they very rightly would like to know a lot. They would like to inspect, they would like to audit, they would like to satisfy themselves that the data generated and being offered to them in the file is done in the best rigors of clinical research methodologies. So that is something which consumes a lot of resources, human, financial, time, in the clinical development. And physicians clearly have a role in that. So mostly the clinical development teams are led by a physician, and there are a number of other physicians in the team. Sometimes you could have a couple of PhDs and other people from pharmacy backgrounds who are also highly trained in clinical research and would like that as a career. But clearly the medical team has a huge role there. And then within that team, you could have various levels of responsibility depending on seniority, obviously, right from the clinical team leader, right down out to the clinical trial physician or the medical monitor for the study. So there are multiple roles that one plays within that, right? So that's the piece of clinical research. Extremely important, and absolutely there are no second prizes there, because we are talking about hundreds of millions of euros being spent in a product development. And I speak for across the industry, not just one company. So with that kind of stakes, so the decision making has to be absolutely spot on with good science, with good research. The data should be absolutely immaculate, right? And acceptable to the global community. Otherwise, it's a big waste of resources, and we could have done something much better than that. So a lot of that thought process is also engaged in the clinical research domain. Then we obviously have safety. So maybe not everyone is so much aware, but industry has one of the largest safety departments. In some cases, as big, if not bigger, than the medical department. Now, this safety department consists of people whose job it is to be the custodians of data on the safety of their vaccines or drugs. They do it even during development. There is a role for the safety physician or safety scientist there, but then they continue to follow the product until the last day the product leaves the organization as a whole product that will no longer be in the market. So throughout the life journey of a product, the role of the safety scientist physician is paramount. In vaccines, even more so, because unlike some drugs, vaccines go to healthy people, and very, very often healthy children, more often than not. So a 6 weeks old helpless baby or a 9 months old beautiful healthy baby is being taken by the mother for his or her immunization. The last thing you want with that is to have a doubt, a question mark on safety of the product your healthy, normal, smiling child is going to receive. So this is absolutely non-negotiable. Whatever else happens, if efficacy of a product is good or bad, it's all secondary. First and above all, the product needs to be safe. And very rigorously, this safety aspect is guarded throughout the industry. Again, I do not speak for one company. This is, I know for sure that this is the way safety is looked upon by the industry. It's also a huge concern for regulators. And I mean, if you, even as a layperson, open CNN, you hear about side effects of this or that vaccine. So that conversation eventually impacts confidence on the vaccine or drug. And lack of that confidence implies certain people would not want to have that product or that vaccine, which then means we have not conquered the public health problem that we were out there to control. And some lives could be lost in the bargain. So a very, very small lack of attention to a subject as important as safety can have a huge consequence, even at a global level. And there have been many, many examples. Time stops me today from going in specific examples, but the number of examples where drugs have been stopped and blocked by regulators because of safety concerns, in some cases only then to find later that the safety concern was not as severe or was acceptable profile, and therefore the product was reintroduced. In some cases, it never was introduced. So on both sides, it has a very, very important impact. There are also medical colleagues who can have that exposure in regulatory department, which is largely not led by medically qualified people, but there are some who do it. Then we have the big piece, which is the medical affairs. Medical affairs is fundamentally translating the science into the end user's language. So the end user is the physician, the practitioner, the pediatrician, the decision maker, the government. So the role of medical affairs is to ensure that this complex science that we generate on one hand is then translated in a way that the risk benefits are well identified, the data is properly analyzed, it is fair, it is balanced, it's appropriate to the context, and it's not designed to imbibe a prescription behavior. No, that's not the job of medical. The job of medical is to make sure the science is well converted into the language of the end user. That's the biggest piece. Now, it's easier said in one line, but when you get about doing it, it has many, many dimensions. And a medical affairs person over a lifetime gets specialized in these multiple dimensions, which could be as much as managing or interacting with key decision makers, or interacting with academia, interacting with science, with research teams. So in a common language, as a student of vaccines, I'm very fond of the line that says, our job is to convert vaccines into vaccination. So the best vaccines we develop, working day and night, spending zillions on it, they are useless if they sit in a refrigerator somewhere. A vaccine will only be of use when it reaches the arm of that child or that person it was designed to protect. And this journey between developing the vaccine and converting it actually to the act of vaccination is what the medical affairs team is deeply, deeply engaged in. Lastly, we do have some colleagues who, right from the very beginning, who are medically qualified colleagues, but they prefer to go into commercial departments within the industry. That's another avenue open. Wasn't very common when I used to be a trained. And I see it not just in industry, I see it in civil services. You have doctors who qualify for Indian Police Service, Administrative Service, even Foreign Service, I'm aware of a few. So, and a lot of them have MBAs that they have gathered over time, or other branches of research of academia that they have developed themselves as. Some of them, and they do very well. Some, to my knowledge, at least one has even become the CEO of a large company. So that is the way, that's the mindset that people, some of us do have, and that's another opportunity open. But I'm not too qualified to comment on that. I haven't ever worked in that space. Now, within the medical affairs, we have also tiers. So we have teams at country levels, which you can, let's for the purpose of discussion, call it country medical affairs. Then we have a regional level, like the emerging market region, European region, North American region. Different companies organize themselves in different structures, but that's above country structures of regions. And then you have the global structure, which is one centralized team doing a global medical affairs function. And then there are other ones like information services. Then you have the event organizations, the Congress team. So multiple such teams also exist within that umbrella. They don't all have to be medics, of course, right? Publications is a very, very important part of it. Industry does break out some of the finest publications in highest level peer-reviewed journals every year. We continuously keep doing that on a regular basis. There's a department that actually supports that function, which can also have a place for a physician sometimes. So this was on the level of the structural elements and the possible opportunities to go for. And the first step, as I said in the very beginning, was to take a step back and ask yourself, A, do I want to do it? B, would I really enjoy doing it? Because life is long haul, and opportunities which appear like very rich or very rewarding, and they are many a times, they don't necessarily fulfill you to the extent that your own desire or happiness fulfills you. So it's a very, very important question to ask. And only once that has been asked and re-asked should a decision be made to move in that direction. Now we come to the last point, and then I'll stop and take your questions or clarifications, which is the selection process. So how does one go about it? Now there are multiple ways of doing it. So let's take my own example. I am more like a mid-entry executive because I started my life as a regular pediatrician, hospitals, state-owned hospitals. I headed a small department at one stage in my life. And from there, I moved to the industry, directly at a level of medical director for South Asia, and then a director for a range in France, and then the complete